Skechcraft is recorded in front of a live internet audience and supported by listeners like you. Please be sure to leave a review on iTunes, like and share our Facebook page, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. All links can be found at sketchcraft.com. That's Skechcraft, C-R-A-F-T, the name of the podcast.com. Remember, every little bit counts and it all helps to grow the show. Thanks. Welcome to Skechcraft, the podcast for art, games, and process junkies. I'm Rob Duenas, full-time illustrator and graphic artist Esquire. This is an unedited podcast, which will probably contain strong language, so listener discretion is advised. Hello everybody and welcome back to Skechcraft, the podcast for art, games, and process junkies. And if you can hear that breathing, can you hear it? I can hear it. If you can hear that breathing on the other side of the line, joining me on this episode and for all foreseeable episodes into the future is Brandon James. Brandon, say hi.
Hello.
If you are wondering to yourselves, how do I know that voice? Where do I know that from? Brandon joined us for the Pacific Rim episode, which actually got a fair amount of downloads, surprisingly so.
For as much hate as we put on it.
Right, you would think I did get a few people who disagreed, but I didn't. For as many downloads as it got, I thought I would have gotten a lot more. I tend to think that a lot more people out there didn't like it than did like it. But whatever, let's not retread over that. They are making a sequel more than likely, so we'll get to endure more of that later on. The reason why Brandon's joining me is because I have sort of run out of ideas to talk about on Skechcraft. Not so much ideas, more like I am so consumed right now with my own projects that I don't really have a lot to complain about, like other than like my customers, which would make no sense, that would just get me into trouble, or the 3 people who help write Game Cave, which would just, again, piss them off. So I'm not really enduring a lot of strife other than just trying to get everything completed to pay the bills. And there's only so many times you can kind of talk about that. But Brandon is sort of a young up-and-coming artist, right? Independent artist out there in Arizona.
Trying, yep, out in Arizona.
Yeah, Brandon's grinding it. And I met Brandon back in 2007 or 8, somewhere around there.
Give or take, yeah.
Yeah, at Wizard World at the LA Convention Center. And he proceeded to tell me about how he was a t-shirt designer, which is really great to hear at the time because that's what I had been doing for a living for the longest. But that was really nice to meet Brandon. And we've gotten along ever since. So since Brandon's sort of like in a lot of the sort of entry-level places that I was at a while back, I think it would be really great to have him sort of on board to bring up things that I myself would not normally care to mention or even, think about at this point. It was either this or I just complain about the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. every week. But seeing as how I can't bear to watch one more episode or anything, I have never even actually completed an episode of the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Brandon.
I made it to about 2.5, and then I was done. I
couldn't finish the pilot. I could not finish the pilot, and I will say this about that show. I know Joss Whedon's getting all the credit on this, and granted, he deserves some of it. But Marvel TV's ran by Jeff Loeb, and if you are unfamiliar with Jeff Loeb, just look at the brilliance of Smallville and Heroes when he joined. You know what I mean? Not the greatest shows to begin with, but just look how well they did after he came on board. And I dare you to finish reading the Ultimates 3. Like, just sit through that, and
or watch Heroes and then try to guess when he jumped on and became a little bit of creative person on that show. You'll know when the show's going good and then just fuck.
Yeah. So that's why some folks were trying to say to me, it's Disney, Rob. And I'm like, look, it's not Disney because here I am watching the movies, like Avengers on Forward that involve Disney. And I just think that to really illustrate, for those out there that like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or defend it, just do me a favor. Please go watch the trailer for Captain America Winter Soldier and explain to me how that version of Shield is existing simultaneously with the buffoonery of the Agents of Shield TV show. Like I can't even begin to like understand how you can defend it. You know?
Do you want to talk about that trailer a little bit? Because I was a little confused by it.
Well, let's
I don't know
start
if you
to
want to
build
get.
a little bit of a format, right? So, like, what we'll do is we'll do a little bit of news and off-topic stuff for about the first 15 minutes, 20 minutes of the cast, and then we'll roll into a topic. I'm going to try and keep it at 10 to 15 minutes, so these things don't go on an hour.
Right.
But so, okay, go ahead, bring up. What do you want to talk about?
Uh, Captain America, the new trailer, real
The
quick.
Winter Soldier trailer.
Right. Now, is Captain America against Shield, with Shield? I have no clue who he's fighting. I just see him beating everybody up.
Well, that's a bit of the marketing network right there.
Is that what?
Basically, the movie takes place 2.5 years after the Avengers, and so you're kind of seeing him experience the difference between him sort of realizing what the world's actually like compared to when he was an active soldier, and he's sort of getting an inner working of he didn't really know Shield, he knew Nick Fury, right, in the Avengers.
Right.
So this is him sort of like, hey, I'm joining the right guys, and then maybe realizing that's not, they don't really uphold the values that he grew up with. Hence the barbershop quartet line, like, trying to remind
Right.
that he's from a different era and he just doesn't agree with this. So it's a little bit of like commentary on modern drone warfare or modern combat and modern foreign policy in a way. Like it's all still popcorn stuff, and then you have the subplot of the
Bucky and
right, yeah, Bucky and everything else. So, but I thought the
I
trailer
thought
was
he
pretty.
looked cool.
Yeah, I thought the trailer was pretty good. It was a shame. Like I was like countdown until something falls and explodes. Just waiting, just waiting. And then we had it, right? Like the
Right.
Men in Black moment.
Helicarrier.
Yeah, big CG something falls down and blows something up. So yeah, the Men in Black shot. That was a little. I don't know how many times we see that and we become impressed by what they call it, destruction porn. Is the
Right.
phrase for it? It's like
It's just whatever is the giant ship, orb, or hovering object just comes crashing down. Everybody runs out of the way. Prometheus scene where something's falling and everybody just in awe of a giant structure falling to pieces.
right, and then we have like the truck flipping sequence, which reminds me of the one from The Dark Knight in a way. Like it's.
Right.
But that all being said, looks pretty good. I'm not the hugest like Marvelite. Like I'm not gonna be there at the midnight screening for these things, but I enjoy going.
Right.
I think they're fun movies. And they tend to they're more fun than trying to sit through like half the other movies that come out. So I could watch. I could watch Captain America as long as Marvel's making it, as opposed to say Pacific Rim. Or I didn't even bother
Right.
seeing the Wolverine movie. So
It-
you had a
it was
question about Wolverine earlier. You want to bring that up?
Yes. I don't understand why it's so hard to just put Wolverine in a mask. I mean, the last movie, I thought a perfect setup would have been him maybe as a present getting a mask, like I don't know what it is, a kabuki mask or wherever they are, just resembling his comic book version mask. He doesn't even have to wear it, just knowing he has it. I mean, every other, Iron Man, Captain America, they have their comic book outfits. They even have their alternate suits in the movies. But Wolverine is in a wife beater and a leather jacket in almost every movie. Just put him. I don't know why they can't put him in a mask. It drives me crazy.
Well, I'll explain to you why. Because him wearing a mask makes absolutely no sense. Now, I'm not saying I don't agree with you that it would look cool, but
Right.
if you understand that the point of a mask is to hide your identity and they walk among you, you know what I mean? In the movies, no one wears a mask. Everyone's just walking around being themselves. Like the X-Men movies right now are sort of what do you call that? They're sort of a I don't want, what's that word I'm thinking of? They're speech for like gay rights in a way, right? Like being mutant and proud, right? Is like a
Right.
speech
We're
for
among you. We're just like you.
right. So I don't know, like it's not a superhero movie in that sense, right? In that
But I mean,
current universe.
Days of Future Past, they're, the whole thing is they're going to be hunted. So why not? Why not throw on some masks, hide your
Well, we don't
identity if
know.
you're-
we don't know if there isn't that short sequence where he might wear one in the future, do we?
I would
So
like that though, just one time.
and look, I agree that there could be a sequence in the film where they're like in a danger room and that could occur, like, and then he goes, "Man, this is retarded" or something, like,
Right.
like I would never wear this out, really, like, but there could be a place to put it just for the fans, and I believe that the only reason why that hasn't been done, other than the explanation I explained to you, was for the same reason why Sentinels weren't in a movie up until now, and that's because uh, a guy used to run Fox named Tim Rothman, who he's the one directly responsible for that joke in the first movie where the two claws he flips you off, right? That was
Right.
like he had to be in the movie. Tim Rothman. He was the one who said giant robots and because Sentinels were supposed to be an X-Men too, X-Men United or X2. He said giant robots were silly or stupid. So he's the reason why a lot of that stuff, a lot of the comic booky things, definitely never made it into the films. Those sort of like overt comic book stuff. So
Right.
the way they sort of just flipped the movies was that, well, they're kind of costumey, but it's really all about the character stuff. But look, I agree with you. I
Right.
think there could be plays for it. I doubt anyone's gonna want to cover up Hugh Jackman's face. Like any
Right.
anybody in marketing is gonna want that, in a film. Unfortunately, I do. That's where I get back to like the first class film. I thought was cool in that their costumes were garish. Like he did have the
Right.
retro Magneto costume, which seems to be all gone. Like whatever distance occurred in between first class and Days of Future Past or whatever, like he seems to have abandoned the Magneto get up altogether or something,
Right. I mean,
which
but I
scares me.
liked the yellow and blue on the X-Men.
Right, but you know what scares me about that, Brandon, is it's called, I call it the Metroid scheme, right? It's like the Metroid plot, and whenever they do this in a movie, to me, like it's always a recipe for disaster. It's where you have an original film, say Romancing the Stone. You ever see Romancing the Stone way back in the day? It's like a love
Not
comedy.
familiar, yeah.
The Metroid plot occurs mostly in romance movies, but I'll show you how they happen in superhero films. So the Metroid plot is that in Metroid, the video game, you start off with all these great powers, right? And then you lose them, and then you spend the rest of the game sort of collecting all those powers back. Correct? That's the basic mechanic of
Right.
Metroid. So what they usually do with the movie is they build it all up so everyone ends up in the best position possible. The guy gets the girl, like in Romancing the Stone, Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner get together. And then you have a sequel where some time has passed and they're all broken up and all those relationships are broken and scattered amongst the earth and they have to get back together again. And
Right.
that never
Rebuilding.
works. It never works, dude. Like it's just something that it's never worked. It's why, like, if you look at the Dark Knight Rises, like they kind of did that, right? At the end of the Dark Knight, he's like the Batman, right? He's fully Batman
Right.
now, And then you open it up, Dark Knight Rises. Well, he's not really. He's kind of not been Batman for a while. He doesn't care. And so, like, I see this Professor Xavier, the James McAvoy whatever version, looking like Lieutenant Dan, with the beard
Right.
and not caring, and Magneto
Yeah.
seems to not give a shit. And so then I'm like, oh, they're gonna do the Metroid thing, you know what I mean? Like, and it's just a shame. Like, I don't know why they have to keep using that mechanic, you know.
Right.
So, but we don't really know yet on that film. But hey, like I'm with you. It would be nice to see them working. I don't know if I'd want a whole movie where he does it because Wolverine. I mean, Logan doesn't hide, you know, his identity
Right.
from anybody.
But I mean, it just like you were saying, maybe just for a quick scene, he's like, "This is ridiculous," cuts it off his face or rips it off. I mean, just I don't know. Sometimes I just wish they have a little bit more comic book in the comic book movie. But
Well, if Marvel ever makes an X-Men movie, you'll see it. That's the one thing I can tell you. I mean, they're making Guardians of the Galaxy. What studio is going to have the balls to make that? As for much as I don't like Marvel comics, like the actual comic books anymore, their movie division is pretty interesting to me. I think they do a pretty good job
right.
of working comic book stuff into films.
I
Whereas,
mean, Thor's authentic. Thor has all the same stuff.
but
the
he don't
same
wear the helmet all the
character.
time. It's just like in a couple scenes, right?
Right.
Look,
But
I'm telling
sure
you,
it's enough
if
for
Marvel
people.
makes an X-Men
That'd be-
movie, you'll have at least one scene where Hugh Jackman wears that mask, or whoever plays Wolverine, you know.
Right.
But
It'll
that
be
ain't
it'll
gonna
be
happen.
him. He'll be 55 and they'll still play him as Wolverine.
He'll be old man Logan.
All right.
Right. So with that being said, do you have anything else? Anything you seen this week that you want to talk about? You all good?
Um,
You're good, right?
no, I'm good.
Yeah, you get the hint. All right, you get
Yeah.
the hint.
Yes, I am good.
Right. Okay. So hey, just quick. You like the Captain America trailer? Yes or no?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it looks good.
3 out of 5
I like
stars. 4 out of 5.
I'll give it a 3 out of 5 just because of Bucky. Looks badass, sunken eyes, that little mask over on his face. The arm looks badass. I mean, it looks more exciting than the first one. So.
But the first one was actually a pretty good trailer, though.
Mm.
Oh, you didn't like the first one.
No,
We'll
I
have
mean
to
the
talk
first
about that at a
movie.
later days. Yeah. Yeah, we'll talk about that at a later day. I felt it was a good 4.5 out of 5 stars actually, mostly because they didn't really like skirt around too many issues. I mean, and they put Robert Redford right in there in the beginning, which I thought was great. So I hope we don't find out that Coulson is like Redford's kid. You know what I mean? Like, I just hope. You know what I mean? Like, there's just gonna be some lame ass tie to the show that I don't want to know about. So, all right, let's move on to the next topic. Okay, and we're back. So, Brandon wanted to talk about portfolio stuff. Portfolio. If you're an artist out there and you're getting out of school, or you just got into school, or you're thinking about showing your stuff at conventions, to get into comics, or maybe just to get a job somewhere doing whatever, whether it's graphic design or 3D stuff. So I guess this stuff would sort of apply to you. So Brandon, you have some questions. Let's start off with the first one.
When is usually the best time you want to show your portfolio to an editor? At a con, maybe after the con, maybe when you catch them at a local comic store and you might have it on you. I mean, when's usually the best time to basically harass an editor to look at your portfolio? Not an artist, but an actual editor for a company.
Well, the best time is when you ask them if they'd be willing to look at it and they say okay. So I can tell you right now, like if you go to a major convention like Comic-Con in San Diego, and you can even find an editor. So this pertains to getting into comic books. If you can even find an editor nowadays at a con, then I would say do everything you can to try and get them to look at it. The fact of the matter is most editors don't even go to big cons or any cons for that matter, because they don't want to have to take your portfolio samples with them on the airport or airplane. Same goes with pitching a book. Like if you're going to pitch a comic book, which I've done many times, cold call too, even at Comic-Con here in San Diego. And you have like samples to hand them. It's always difficult for them. So the question is it when's the best time for them, or the best time like from your skill set?
I would say both. Also my skill set, because I mean I'm still working on making a presentable portfolio, but I don't think I'm there yet. So I mean, what usually is the things you want to bring to it, the things you want to showcase? I mean, I'm kind
Right.
of
Well,
lost
okay. So you basically, let's start with this. So the first thing you want to do is you want to have your stuff in an actual. If you're drawing comics and you're going to be an artist, a penciler, you want to show sequential storyboards. You don't want to show covers or pinup art. You want to show sequential storytelling. Todd McFarlane used to tell me at Comic-Con that he would take the last 5 pages of a comic book and redraw them, based off the scripts or something, like kind of follow the dialogue, see what's going on, and then kind of redraw those. So the editor had a frame of reference. So if you were hitting up an X-Men editor, you technically could take the last 5 pages of the last issue that they actually worked on, and they would know what the hell it is they're looking at.
Right.
I think that might still hold up these days, being a pretty good idea to do, regardless. If you can find an X-Men editor. More than likely, you're going to be hitting up the real indie guys, like Zenoscope or maybe is Chaos a company anymore? I don't know. But a lot of the little indie guys. But if you hit up anybody, you want to have a full size 11 by 17 portfolio. Do not bring your fucking iPad, dude. Like I've dealt with that, where someone's like, "Want to touch my iPad?" and I'm looking at their iPad with all these fingerprints, and I'm like, "No."
Wow.
Like plus you want to be able to see as an editor, they want to be able to see your art up close as it would exist when you turned it in,
Right.
and everything you can do there. So first off, bring a full 11 by 17 portfolio. You can get them pretty cheaply anywhere. You're at your art store online. Do not put original copies of your art in the portfolio. Don't bring the original artwork. Get really good copies of your art, and put them in there. Make sure it's a newer portfolio. It's not all ratty and shit like it's the one you've had in your closet for the last 10 years. Spend the fucking money. You can bring a smaller version of the same samples into like a scaled down to say like 8.5 by 11 size or something, whatever the scalable thing is. They make smaller portfolios if they want to see something small, so you could have, what you could do is if it's really busy, you could have photocopies of your stuff stapled together and create like 10, 15 sets of these things or something at any given time, and you could have photocopies of your samples that you could hand them to have your info on each page and some shit if you would like to do that, if they're incredibly busy. If there's time and you just want to show them your stuff, then you can have your portfolio ready. I would be prepared for both and have them easily accessible. Don't have to put all your stuff down and get all your stuff back out. Also, when you're showing your portfolios at con, do not go around getting free swag. So when you go up to an editor to show your art, you're like having to set down all your fucking posters and prints,
and all your bags,
plushies, and yeah, you like get rid of all that shit. You're there to do business. You're not there to look. I love it when people buy my stuff, but if they're gonna go do a portfolio review, my stuff needs to not be on them. You know what I mean? It needs to be at home. So make sure you're presentable. Make sure you don't got stinky breath. Make sure you got business cards handy. Make sure that you got photocopies of your work. Make sure that you got the hard copy, portfolio. Make sure it's not filled with original artwork so no one can steal your shit. Just really good quality prints. Anything else I can think of?
Do you ever think it's a bad idea to show other artists your portfolio and get their input? I mean, because they're basically
no. But what I would also remind you is it's rare that other artists get artists hired.
Right. That's what I'm saying. That they're not going to put their foot in the door for me. So I mean. But
you want to show writers and you want to show editors as much as humanly possible. If you want an art critique from an artist, and you're willing to accept whatever they tell you, then sure, you can always ask someone for a review, but
be prepared for their opinion.
And whether or not it will actually make sense or anything else. I mean, I'm the first to say artists are the least forgiving, or the least understanding. And they're always, I would say, not always, I would say 90% of the time, they're looking at you in contrast to them. Unless they're so far above the scale that they're really generous, like the only reason why I think I have the temperament I have with portfolios and stuff is because of when I went to Comic-Con and watched so many people get ripped. I never brought a portfolio to San Diego Con, but I've said this a million times. I would stand and watch the portfolio reviews that were 50, 70 people deep. I would stand right in the front and just watch, And because I was a kid, no one complained about me watching a portfolio review. And I would just listen and listen. And anytime I walked around con and saw someone getting a review from someone, I would stop and listen, and watch. So I learned pretty quickly the same things, A lot of the big mistakes people make is copying panels, copying artwork, copying sequences from other books. They're looking at comics to draw comics,
Right.
And these days, like when I was a kid, it was cool to do some really cool pinups in your stuff to have some good splash pages here and there. These days, they just want to see widescreen panel, storyboard sequences, widescreen panels. Because every script you're going to get is going to be widescreen panel, storyboard sequence, so have a really good sense of storytelling or storyboarding from that sense,
Right. And I've been thinking about picking up just some written out pages from books that I don't normally read or haven't seen That way I don't mentally start to copy another artist's way of drawing that page, or take what they've done. So I'll take like maybe a random book like Invincible. I mean, I read that, but let's say I take a script from it and I'll try to redo the pages from there without actually seeing, the actual artist pages. Just so I don't, like you say, start to copy or mimic what they've already done.
Right, but I mean, like if I was gonna go and apply my like show off my portfolio to who writes what Robert Kirkman,
Robert Kirkman.
then showing some Invincible samples and some Walking Dead samples based off stuff that he did, you know, wouldn't be such a bad idea. Just make sure you're not copying it, you know.
Right.
But taking Invincible samples over to the Big Dog Ink booth won't. I mean,
Right.
it's an indication you can draw, you know, but you want to make certain that like Big Dog Ink is probably not the best example, but like if I took Invincible over to the guy who's in charge of IDW of the Star Trek books,
Right.
that's what I mean, where they're looking for like actor reference and stuff, like. You just want to make certain that you're not showing like if you say you draw in a real pop art kind of graphic style, right? Like say like
Right.
Eric Larson, right, for the lack of a better example, and you show that to say the Dark Horse guy in charge of the Firefly comics, expect a negative review,
Right.
and it really has very little to do with how you draw, just that you're showing. You want to make certain that you're showing them the kind of thing they're looking for, just to get past that one hump,
Right. So know the people you're gonna, which wouldn't be
know
bad
the
to have more than
properties that you're
one
applying
portfolio.
for. Go ahead.
I was gonna say it wouldn't be a bad idea to have more than one portfolio then, based off what you're trying to show. Maybe one with a lot of sci-fi, one with a lot of action, superheroes, or because you're
Certainly
saying
for any, I would say one that has to do with movies and licensed property. So if you're going to do movies and actor references, that's like Star Trek, Firefly, Buffy, those kinds of things, TV shows.
right.
Then maybe you got one that's for kids stuff, like Young Justice or like the children's properties. If you're diverse in style, and you have the ability to sort of like transition yourself, then yeah, having a few of those different things helps because but never show your Young Justice art to the guy in charge of Evil Ernie comics,
Right.
because the review you're gonna get's really on the fact that you brought that to them in the first place. Got another question?
Thinking.
You had it written down, right?
Yeah. How often do you get people bringing their portfolios to you? Like, I mean, I know you said the iPad thing, but I mean, how often do you get people coming up to you and asking for your opinion?
When I go to cons, I'd say maybe a dozen times a day.
Really, a dozen? Damn.
About a dozen, yeah. Well, first off, I mean, like, because I have a booth and it says Skechcraft or whatever else behind me, people just think, I've made it in life for whatever reason, or they see the
Right.
quality of my work and think that, oh, that guy, So a lot of them just want to know, they go, well, that guy seems to have, his shit together. Can I get you to think, can you tell me what you think? And my response generally is always, what are you trying to do? So like, I mean, I'll get people that will throw everything and their kitchen sink into a portfolio. And the question is, are you trying to color comics? If you're trying to pencil comics, you show pencils and sequentials. If you're trying to color comics, you show color samples, you show real physical, tangible color samples if you do Copics or paintings or whatever on top of sequential, stuff in the back, that
Right.
kind of thing. But you don't show me, like, I've had people show me portfolios, and they'll have graphic design. Like, this is a brochure I did, in there, and they're trying to, like, ask me how to draw comics, and I'm like, well, why is that in there? Well, that's just in there because, or, like, their art will be scaled. It'll be like, let's say you have a 11 by 14 portfolio, and their art will be all, like a 4 by 6 area in the corner of the page. So, like, the presentation is half the time is all fucked up. And then when people are really good, like I've had a few of them come up and I'm like, you're pretty good. The question is, well, what do I do? So like I had there's a guy who came up to me once when I was at the Big Dog Ink table in 2010 at PhoenixCon. And he was like, hey, I want to show you my wife's portfolio. And I said, no. You know, I am more than willing to look at that. And he had it in his hands. I said, I am more than willing to look at that when she comes here and presents it herself. Oh, but she's not here today. Then tomorrow, she's more than welcome to come over here and show me herself. And he had this look, and he's a really nice guy, you know. And I said, look, I'm not trying to be a jerk, but I'm an artist, right? And I never had anyone else represent my portfolio at a convention for me.
Right.
So I don't think it's too much to ask. Tomorrow when she's walking around here, if she wants, you know, she doesn't want the hassle or she's stressed out about people critiquing her work, then don't come at all. You know,
Right.
but I'm just saying that for me, I'm not looking at it unless the artist who drew it did that stuff. So he brought her by the next day, and her art was pretty good, and I showed it to Tom, and she does regular work now at Big Dog, you know?
Oh wow.
She does all the Ursa covers. Like she has that really cool Natalie
Oh, yeah.
Sanders. Yeah, Natalie. Yeah, Natalie. So and Natalie's really cool, man. Her and her husband. I always forget their names. I'm horrible with names.
I just saw them in Vegas. I can't.
Yeah,
I want to say
they're
Scott,
like
but
they're like the nicest couple I've ever met, right?
right. They're
like
really
they
nice.
yeah they sing Disney tunes for fun in the car, you know? Like they're like they are the happiest couple I've ever met, and I'm always just so like I'm always happy to be near them. They're cool people, but that was the first time I met them, and her stuff was really good, you know. But I just said, you know, there really wasn't much I could tell her, you know, other than I would say how long. I asked her how long it took, and if she was looking for cover work with her stuff, you know. Which luckily now in comics there are places to get some cover work, like at Big Dog and Zenoscope and stuff, but it's few and far between, you know.
Right. Becomes the same people over and over. But that's another topic. But yeah, I mean that's good though that she actually did, you know, muster the courage to come back and do it. 'Cause I would imagine there's a lot of people afraid to just come up to people and show their stuff for fear of rejection or, you know, just smart ass comments from certain artists.
Sure, and I remember he was like, well, you know, what's his face over at Zenoscope didn't have a problem with it. I'm like, well, then go show him her portfolio again, dude. I don't know what you want from me. Like I don't think you. What part of you're talking to? I don't care if that guy over there is cool with it. I'm not cool with it. I don't see.
Right.
It's so hard. Like it was just like, and the thought never occurred to him, you know, like that I would expect her to rep her own portfolio, you know. But I you know, I gave Tom the thumbs up. I'm like, she's dope, dude, you know. And that's the other thing too. Like, I don't know if, you know, that's the case for a lot of artists, if they would even be willing, because anytime artists feel like anytime they give another artist props, that could cost them a job, you know?
Right.
To that end, I say artists generally cost themselves jobs. You know, like they run themselves out of the picture on their own. You don't need another artist to do it for you, you know? Whether it's the quality of your work or your attitude or your inability to meet deadlines or whatever else, you know?
Right.
So I'm never too worried about that sort of thing, you know? You can't be afraid of talent, you know, as an artist, you know? You can't be afraid of it or threatened by it because there's just so many talented people in the world that it's just ridiculous.
Right. I mean, maybe back in the day I'd get bummed if I saw a really badass portfolio, but now I just know there's always going to be someone who likes my art, and there'll be someone who likes someone else's art. Everybody has their own taste, and there's always somebody looking for something different. So, I mean, as far as showing my portfolio eventually, I mean, maybe someday someone's going to go, wow, I need that on a book, or I need that for this project. You know, maybe 100 no's, maybe I'll have a one yes. So, I mean, I'm not too
Well,
worried
I always
about
tell everybody should be repping their own stuff, you know, selling
Yeah.
commissions, selling prints, whatever you got to do to bring money in, you know? Don't just wait for the industry to cut you a check or think that that is a sign of validation for your ability to draw.
Right.
You know? Because it generally has very little, you know, to do with if like I've had a hardest time ever getting any work on a Turtles comic, you know. I've had Peter Laird turn me down several times, dude. You know, the IDW guys not interested
Right.
on any circumstance. No matter how many fans hit him up or other publishers that I know make personal phone calls to pull strings, just anything, a free pinup in the back, the answer has always been no. you know? So I just learned to just accept that, it's just not for me, for whatever reason. So,
Have you ever had someone look at your portfolio and just rip it to shit?
no.
Never a bad experience.
Bad experience? No. No, and that's because I didn't show my stuff until I was at a level that I knew was acceptable for entry level work. Like I knew perspective, I knew uh, foreshortening, I knew how to tell a decent story.
Right.
The worst thing I've ever had, said about my art from a professional. Oh God, I'm trying to think back, dude. One time I did these storyboards in 2003, I think it was 2003, 2004, for a local company, and they were like, "What?" It was supposed to be this girl, and it was gonna be this little animatic for the CG thing they were making, and it was about this girl and these hamsters, and I just drew her in a way that was so stylistic. Like, I don't want to say it looked like Carlos Maglia. It didn't look like Ramos or Maglia, but you know how like they really push style, you know?
Right.
I had pushed the style so far that she was scary to them. Like her eyes were too wide open, her mouth too, and I hadn't really thought about it from that standpoint. I was more like, well, everything's drawn well, and it's like, yeah, it's drawn well, but look at her. She's like a fucking creepoid. So I went back and I fixed it, and turned it in. Everyone was happy, but that's the last time I've had something that was like a little bit of a shock on the system. But no, I haven't had anyone ever say your shit sucks, dude. But that's because like I didn't go to con, when my shit really did suck. I mean, I knew it wasn't acceptable, so I didn't bother them with the time.
Right. So it came back to the first thing that you knew when was the right time to show your portfolio.
Yeah, well, I knew when the right time was when I could go and buy any comic from the indies. The indies at the time were like Devil's Due, like remember those Imaginaries and all those kinds of books.
Right.
Whatever the like Viper comics at the time. So like whatever, the entry level dudes were doing, I knew I could beat. Maybe I mean from a sheer artistic point, I knew I could. I felt, okay, I can operate at this level, and I know I can exceed at that level. So, you know, um, being that those are the guys who generally hire newcomers for little to no money, in a lot of cases no money, like Arcana and those guys, uh, I never had a problem getting work from that example. But I mean, that being said, you know what I mean? Like, it's not gonna pay a lot too because they're indie guys. Might make 40
Right.
bucks for 12 hours worth of effort. But no, I never got ripped to shreds. I would get ripped to shreds today with my portfolio if I walked into certain places. You know, like I guarantee you, if I went and applied to be the concept artist for on Call of Duty, I would get ripped to shreds because nothing I do resembles anything they do. You
Right.
know, so I would then have to sit down and create whatever they kind of create. So I would never go into that with what I have now. I would tailor a whole portfolio for a job like that. You know,
Right.
yeah, because you can't expect anyone to look at what you're capable of doing and see how it translates to what they're doing. They're not going to be able to do that.
Right. I mean, I can't draw a portfolio full of Mickey Mouse and then go into a job interview for Captain America and be like, no, I can draw it. Just imagine me drawing it.
Oh, word of advice: if you have a portfolio full of Mickey Mouse, never take it to a Disney portfolio review too. Matter of fact, anything that has to do with Hollywood and animation, never take them fan art. I'm just warning everyone out there now. Don't do it. You will get ripped to shreds. They will see it as some form of art theft or something.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So like if you were going to Nickelodeon to try and become a storyboard or get any kind of job there, never show them, samples of like, oh, I drew some storyboards for, Avatar or Legend of Korra or something. Never. Only show like life drawing samples or, maybe storyboards for like a project you guys did. Maybe you had like a trailer you made. You know what I mean? Like you have to
Right.
create original projects and show them that kind of stuff. Never show them fan art. They'll never. It's not like comics, dude.
Good to know.
Yeah. Is that it?
I think that's it. I think that's all I have towards portfolios, which had been on my mind a lot because of, on Facebook and Twitter, you see a lot of editors openly talking about, artists needing to step their game up and present well-rounded portfolios and not just half-assed portfolios, which is understandable, and I've been seeing it. And I can't really go on there and ask some editor, well, what do you think of this? I'd rather ask someone that I know like you, who's had your foot in many doors, on their approach on how to do that. I'd rather look like a dumbass in front of you and get ripped for 20 minutes than, go up to an editor and then him remember my face and the bullshit I showed him.
Right. Well, I guess I know what you're talking about, and I've seen that kind of stuff before. I mean, people listening to this cast will probably go, "But Rob, how long do I have to show you to get approval?" No. Show as many people as you can. I mean, honestly, dude, like if you aren't getting a lot of love from credible people, like I've had famous people like my shit on Deviant. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's pretty good sign that, okay, I probably have the ability to do stuff, At that point, it's just putting my foot forward, and, a well-rounded portfolio is gonna take some level of, like, getting fucked around with,
Right.
to an extent. The best advice I can give you is the same advice I give you today, is get yourself a small press, artist alley table somewhere, and start selling your shit. And if you learn to really like market yourself on that level, like you can build a clean looking booth, you have a nice little poster behind you, or you know how to present yourself there. One, a lot of these guys will find you because they'll be walking around looking for that shit.
Right.
And then two, you know what I mean? You'll learn what works and doesn't work. I mean, you can't just have a portfolio where then half of it is like, scraps and some shit I drew on the back of my homework. And I've seen some weird stuff like that in portfolios before.
That's how mine looked when I first met you at the Vegas, or not Vegas, but the LA Con. I mean, I think I had a Trapper Keeper, like I was going to school with 3-ring binder.
Yeah, I remember.
It was, looking back, it's horrible. I mean, now I have a banner and I have, my portfolios and my prints, and I still don't, feel like I'm there yet. But I mean, when I first started, oh man, so bad.
Well, like I said, I was already freelancing and doing, regular work before I went to my first con at a table,
Right.
And that first con at a table, I didn't know what to do. I just sat down with 3 drawings, a stack of those copies because I worked at Kinko's, and when they're $1 each, I had a Ninja Turtles, a Splinter, and a Batman print, 8.5 by 11. Just on the table, and I was like $1 commissions, like anything. I just wanted to get some money in,
Right. But I mean, hey, at least we did it. At least we're there trying and showing people. I mean, that's the first step, is getting your art out there.
Right, and that's why I do the podcast. So hopefully, a version of myself at that age is able to find this sort of stuff and have some answers, Because good luck trying to get a book on this shit from Amazon or Barnes and Noble, right?
Not with our witty talk.
Witty, not
Witty.
witty. Yeah, okay. All right, Brandon. So where can we find you on the internet?
You can find me on Facebook, www.facebook.com/JamesDesigns, Twitter at Not Worth a Sketch, Instagram Not Worth a Sketch. I think that pretty much covers it.
Great, and as always, everyone, you can find me here at Skechcraft. That's Sketch, C-R-A-F-T, the name of the podcast.com. You can find me on the Facebook, the Twitters, the DeviantArt. Type in Skechcraft into Google, and you will get everything you've ever wanted and more. Okay, well, join us next week when Brandon will say... Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, so you got to work that out. Remember Pigs in Space? You don't remember?
I didn't see that coming. I need like a good closing. Like.
Yeah, I made that up. Well, it's Pigs in Space, bro. All right, well, I'll talk to you later. Goodbye.